welcome to Season 8 of 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm joined by my podcast pal, Melly.
Yes.
And Stephen.
Great to be back, folks.
Oh,
great to be back.
Pre-season for us, isn't it? This is a run out. We're going to be a wee bit ring rusty here, okay? So listeners, viewers, you need to bear with us. We're just trying to work out the kinks, figure out the new system.
Plus, nothing good has ever reached Season 8.
No.
There's never been a good Season 8 of anything. Was it Game of Thrones that had a terrible Season 8? Is that when it started to really go off the rails?
I can't think of many things that have even made Season 8.
No.
Did The Sopranos make Season 8?
Nope, long gone by then.
I never watched it. The Wire didn't make Season 8.
Nope, 5.
No. 8? Not in Melee anything?
Nope.
Only Figs and Horses? I mean, if you've been watching and listening to this podcast for a while, you know that we have a Patreon site, patreon.com/20minutetims. That's where you can support this podcast in exchange for extra content, videos, writing, podcasts. And what it does is it helps us improve what we do in the podcast. Every season we invest in things like these lovely new cameras you can see here. No more weird differentiation between picture quality. We're all in glorious HD, and that's primarily down to the support of our patrons. So that's patreon.com/20minutetims. There is a link in the bio of the podcast or the YouTube where you can check that out. Now we've got the housekeeping out of the way, Stephen. Celtic did a bit of housekeeping, didn't they? The summer is always time for a couple of things: recruitment, pre-season friendlies, shirt releases, and arguing on Twitter about whether or not signings are good or not.
Up in the prices in the shops as well. We've had that.
Oh, we have had that. Summer of discontent. It's not been a summer of discontent for Celtic though, because we're unbeaten in the pre-season friendly cup.
Yeah, a few too many draws in there, but we did reach the final and then beat Norwich in the final of the pre-season friendly cup.
Because these things matter now. If you remember the tail end of last season, clubs were just making up trophies and champions to be things about.
Aye, but we are the most successful friendly team in the world, having looked at no one else's results. Although Aberdeen have been pretty good. More to come on that.
Definitely.
Aberdeen have been fearsome in there.
That's definitely a trope of the pre-season, how good have Aberdeen have been. What's been your pick of the friendlies?
I think it'd be the Norwich game at the weekend there. The Boric one was good because you got to see Arthur Boric, but
they ripped a piss out that wee bit, didn't they?
Obviously, of course they did. But being back at Celtic Park, and it's probably been the best performance by Celtic as well, and you can see why, because it's the last game we're up to speed before the big stuff starts this week. So it's good to see, and you're kind of getting an idea of who's going to be in the starting team, maybe one or two wee changes, but as well, looking at the team at the weekend there with the signings of Jenz and Mooy, the options on the bench were great. Like two sets of teams we had out there that all looks good. And when you compare it to exactly a year ago today, the only player Celtic had brought in this time last year was Liel Abada. And now look at the team, we've got 7 signings in this summer, I think, and how many signings January last year in the summer? So within a year, it's complete change at Celtic, and it's all good.
I had to laugh. I had to laugh at the Arthur Boric coverage of the friendly, because I did watch that, and as soon as he took the mic to make his big farewell emotional speech, he burst into tears and all that. Celtic TV were basically just like, right, that's us done. It doesn't matter. I know it's in Polish, right? I wouldn't have really gathered what it was he was saying, but I still wanted to take in the moment, his final moment as a professional footballer. I was just like, no, that's us. Just cut the feed stone dead.
I've got to say, I'm a bit iffy about these pre-season friendlies. Like, I've enjoyed the sort of Blackburn and Norwich games. The progression of the pre-season friendlies have got gradually more competitive as we've gotten closer and closer to the season. But I just think Celtic TV have got a bit of a cheek, like selling the earlier ones that are basically just bounce games, basically enhanced training sessions. But sign up for Celtic TV, watch Celtic play SC Wiener, or whatever. You might end up murdering a team 7-0 on a training park.
We kind of vowed this year to not do our Patreon coverage around the friendlies. We've spoken about them on our Patreon property, Breakfast of the Champions, that just talks about the general news, but we haven't been doing the reactions and all that to the individual games, because what you tend to find is that you'll try and force opinions of what you've just seen in one of these friendlies, and then it becomes completely invalid 2 days later when that person who you've focused on, naming no names, but off the top of my head, there were youth players involved in the first couple of friendlies that will play no competitive minutes for Celtic. So you'd find yourself forcing comments, is this guy going to be...
Uro Gide the future of Celtic central defence?
Then you line up for the next...
No.
Yeah.
He's not.
Rocco Vata scored a goal in one of these games as well.
Will Rocco Vata challenge Kyogo and Yakimakis? No.
Yeah. The answer to all of these is basically no. So we haven't been doing that. But what we did say was that these things will ramp up towards the season, because The experimentation will be gone. The idea that it's just for fitness will go as well, because that's not necessarily true about pre-season friendlies. Yes, fitness is a huge aspect of it, but what you're doing is you're preparing for the rigours of a season to be played. So as you get to the last couple of friendlies, especially when you get home and you're playing against, on paper, decent opposition like Norwich and Blackburn Rovers and all that, you're going to be able to see that the teams want to win the games rather than just, run. I mean, you could get fit doing hill sprints. You don't need to play against. You don't need to bring Norwich up for the game. So it's not just about fitness, it's about preparing for the season. And sure enough, it really did ramp up. We had a few tasty ones in there as well.
The Blackburn game, Melly, was particularly tasty. The Legia game as well. That was like those were two proper ties.
Yeah, the Blackburn, I find the away games quite difficult to sort of hold your concentration for, because if you're at the game, it's a lot easier and sort of you've got the background of Celtic Park and all that, you know what you're looking at. But the Blackburn game, I've never seen a friendly with so many bookings like in the flesh. I think there was 5 for Blackburn, and then at the end James McCarthy just went, oh fuck this, and went right through somebody as well.
Who was the ref? Because he was quite lenient to begin with, I felt.
Clancy,
it was Clancy, because the bookings could have came a lot earlier in that game. He was like, it's a friendly, I'll see what happens. Just kept coming.
You definitely think like, it's a friendly. The ref tries to keep his cards in his pocket, but it got to the point where even he was like, come on lads, the Blackburn were flying into challenges, and
the spirit of Souness.
There was some of them were a bit bad, but you're just like, well, Celtic, Wiley did play quite well in that game. You see it with these games, as soon as you start making the subs in the second half, it sort of dies as a contest, both teams making subs, and then some games the quality real from the first 11 to second 11 really dropped down, but as we've been building towards it and getting a couple of players in and back, starting to get, do you know what, it's not that big a drop off in most positions.
And as far as it doesn't matter, it's only about fitness stuff goes, Ange didn't seem to think that as well, because he wasn't particularly happy after one or two of the games. He said, look, things could have been better basically for some of the performances. He's not coming off that pitch and thinking, but we're a wee bit fitter, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that Ange is trying something different with his team. It's clear that he wants to see the players play in a slightly different way. It's clear that he's wanting to give these guys, I know we sort of joked earlier on about like Urogidi and Lawal and Vata not having a chance, but they might not realistically have a chance, but at least there's that's their opportunity to show the manager what they can do. It's not, as you say, it's not just about fitness. There's nothing to really be gained from it from a competitive sense, but for the players there's definitely something to be gained. For the manager, he can see how his team are performing. He might want to try some different tactical things and see how they go. I know there's been a lot of talk melee about Joe Hart playing much further up front, and Joe Hart's spoken about that himself, about getting used to this new position, not further up front, but further out of his goal, rather. Same thing. About getting used to this. Is there anything interesting that you've taken for the pre-season? Any particular players that you thought, do you know what, I'm quite interested in seeing him next season?
I think the main thing for me is the midfield. Where the sort of the defence, you can go, right, he'll come in or he'll come in, but in that midfield, there's been chat about the whole physical defensive midfielder coming in, and I see why that could be a possibility for Celtic, but with the way Ange Postecoglu plays, the best teams in the world don't really have that, and Callum McGregor is that pivot, that metronome in there that makes Celtic tick. To take that out, you just lose so much in there, because he just knows exactly what to do, especially if we're bringing in guys like Bernabe and Mooy and Jenz, who are going to be in the defence. He's going to be in there, and he's going to be a guy available to pass to. He's going to be dictating where everybody should be. He's brilliant at that. And if we were to bring in, was it Sousa in there, a Brazilian guy sitting in there dictating, it doesn't speak English and all that. I just seen it was very difficult. But with Callum McGregor there, it's ahead of him that's really interesting for me, with Turnbull, Hatate and O'Reilly, because between the three of them, I can't quite pick what my best would be out the three of them. And with the form of all three of them during pre-season as well, after one game, I'm right, it's a Hatate and O'Reilly. Oh, wait a minute, it's Turnbull and O'Reilly. It could be any two of the three that play in there. And now bringing in Aaron Mooy as well, you're like, you know what, we've got some really good options.
This defensive midfielder thing, Stephen, I'm not too sure where it came from, because I don't think Ange has ever said it, but it's
quite the opposite, in fact. He said he doesn't want one. Yeah.
Because people are saying, we need this defensive midfielder who can win the ball back and dictate play, the sort of physical guy that can help us in the Champions League. And it's quite reminiscent of an old argument we used to have with Celtic quite a lot, where people would go, we need an attacking midfielder who can beat a man, pick out a pass and maybe chip in with 15 goals. And my answer to that was always, so you want to sign Luka Modric? and this sort of physical midfielder that can win the ball back, sit at the base and dictate play and allow Callum McGregor. I'm like, who is that? Because Michael Essien doesn't play anymore. Do you know what I'm like? But I don't know if that one player that does all those things that you want that's going to fit into Ange's system necessarily exists.
If they do exist, Celtic definitely can't afford them.
That's it. And then even with likes of Aaron Mooy, people are like, he's the physical guy we want. Just because he's got a bald head? Is that why you think he's physical? Because he looks a bit like a hard nut? Because that's not really his profile either.
A bald fraud. But, I get the theory of the big, dominant, physical central defensive midfielder. I get the theory of it because it's been put to me when I've kind of asked people, are you really sure that we need this kind of thing? It's been put to me that we're likely to get, quote, bullied in the Champions League if we don't have anything more robust, shall we say, in midfield. I'm like, is that going to be the answer though? See if we put a big stopper of a defensive midfielder in, is it going to halt Kevin De Bruyne? I don't know. I think we're going to need more than that, but I don't really see where we need that in a domestic setting.
But that's not even Ange's solution to that problem. Ange's solution to that problem is to win the ball further up the pitch.
Yes.
Ange's solution to that problem isn't have a guy as a sort of last resort sitting at the base of midfield.
Yeah, to me, it's not really any more compelling than we need a big no-nonsense centre-half. We've seen that for years. We got one, Shane Duffy.
Yep. And what did he famously give us?
He gave us strictly nonsense. Exclusively nonsense from the no-nonsense centre-half. So I do get the safety. I do get the kind of comfort in having like big physical players in the team. I just don't think it's anything that Ange is looking for or really particularly interested in. The Vinicius Souza thing that Melly's already mentioned, that came along and then I think everyone thought, well, that makes sense. There's the guy everyone talks about that we need. He looked like a big defensive midfielder. His defensive numbers were great. But that might have just been the case of someone became available and he's of such great quality that you think, well, we'll take that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know how interested Celtic were, but it seemed to be almost a done deal at one point in the media. I don't know how close it was, but I think that is kind of solidified in people's minds that we're definitely going to get this guy. And then we went out and signed Aaron Mooy, who's absolutely nothing like that. So he's almost been kind of forced into this bracket that he doesn't belong in because we were linked with this guy for so long.
Yeah, Mooy came on at the weekend and played in the number 6. McGregor moved forward, then Mooy moved into the number 8. But see, when you mention Shane Duffy there, it's just nice to know that when we mention that, it's no longer last season. It's further in the past. It's gone. But the thing with Cal McGregor and bringing in this defensive midfielder, Souza by all accounts looked like a good player, and it's just weird they ended up at Espanyol, who were near relegation in the Spanish league last season. But with Cal McGregor, we've seen this. Me and Stephen spoke about it at the match of the weekend. We've seen this before with bringing in guys like that. Like, we need somebody for European games or domestically sometimes. Right, well, what does that look like? Because we've had Kouassi, we've had Soro, we had Celtic's captain who played in that position, Scott Brown at the time. Can you bring in somebody who's going to improve your team but only plays 6 to 8 games a season when your captain's going to play 99% by what Scott Brown and Cal McGregor played? They're always going to play if they're available. And with the engine Cal McGregor has, what games does he miss unless he's taken out by the manager? He'll never not want to play. So to get this guy in and move McGregor forward, yes, I can see that, but I think Cal McGregor's so much better there with the whole pitch in front of him rather than he's back to goal sometimes and dictating from there, because the players we have there are really good as well, and adding Mooy to that just gives us plenty of options.
I don't think we can really afford to take the view that we need players for the Champions League. Of course we do, but I just don't think it's a really a necessary thing or really a worthwhile thing thinking about, because Celtic can't afford Champions League ready players. They can afford players who are good enough for the Champions League, but that becomes proven in the fullness of time. You could say Kyogo's good enough for the Champions League, probably is, but he didn't come to Celtic with a Champions League pedigree.
No.
So you could easily have levelled that at him. Like, what we're doing with this Japanese guy, we should have gone out and got somebody of Champions League quality. So we don't know at the time whether they're good enough. You can do your analysis and all that as well, but
do your research.
Yeah, do your own research. You can go out and get a guy like that, but we can't afford players who are of undoubted quality ready for the Champions League, because those cost fortunes.
The good thing is you don't need to do your own research, because on patreon.com/20minutetims we employ scouts to look at every player that Celtic signs, and we will let you know exactly what to expect from these players. And that's what we've done in the summer. You've already mentioned Aaron Mooy coming in, Stephen. Aaron Mooy, a player that was targeted last year, ended up going to China, and we just know that Celtic can't really compete with the money that's on offer in China. He went there for big bucks. He's a player that Ange knows. He's a player that Ange has worked with in the past. decent reputation when he was playing down south, Aaron Mooy. How do you feel about the arrival of him?
Lukewarm, to be honest. I'm only being completely honest on it. I wasn't blown away. I wasn't blown away by Aaron Mooy coming in. I think it's very difficult to get super worked up about that because he's a 31-year-old kind of journeyman midfielder. I think we could probably call it Huddersfield and Brighton, but that doesn't mean he's a bad player. I'm just being honest about how I received the news. I thought it was just okay. He came on against Norwich and looked miles off it. He needs several weeks to get back up to speed, I think, because he came on, tried a couple of let's get the fans on side Hollywood passes here, and they didn't come off at all. Looks painfully slow at the moment. That's not likely to change all that much because that's kind of who he is and how he plays, but he will get sharper. He will get his decision making a lot better as well. It's impossible to judge on that, but I'm happy he's here, to be honest. Was I blown away when he signed? No, not at all, but now that the dust has settled on that, it makes sense. He can add a different dimension to the midfield. I don't think he's going to bring this Scott Brown style thing. I don't think there's any direct comparisons we can make with any midfielders that are currently here, which is a good thing because hopefully he's a different dimension to that.
What have you felt about the business overall, Melly, in the summer? And I've got a question here that I think is that I've seen some mental gymnastics from some Celtic fans about because
no way.
Oh, definitely
comfy for this.
Aye, definitely right. So every summer we've done it on this podcast. We've sat down and went, are we stronger than we were last year? And that's the whole thing. And I see a lot of people saying, well, yeah, we are stronger than we were last year, or no, we're not stronger. And it's a bit of a black and white way to try and figure out a window, but we're guilty of it as well, so we probably have to discuss it. But overall, looking at the window, are you happy with incomes? Are you happy with the outgoings? Is there anyone in particular that's come in that you're quite excited about so far?
I'm happy.
And ultimately, are we stronger, do you think?
Yeah, I think we are definitely stronger because Celtic are in a bit of a different position than they have been over the last, say 10 years, because last season we had literally nobody. We had nobody, so we brought in, 14 players, maybe 12 of them you consider first team players, and then we obviously went out and bought another 4 in January. So you're looking at it and going, right, within the year, have Celtic get stronger from this time last year? Definitely. It's incredible the work we've done. Have we improved our 11 from the end of last season? Possibly not, but at the same time, can we go out and get a better player than Joe Hart? Probably not. Juranovic, Greg Taylor we've brought in competition for. The two centre-halves are very good and cost a lot of money. If you go through the midfield, Cal McGregor not going to get a better player than him. O'Reilly, Turnbull, Hatate, 2 of them have just come in. Out wide, 2 of them have just signed Maeda as well, and then up front we've got 2 great strikers. So for Celtic to go and improve upon that is very difficult
because the standard was already quite high. Yeah.
So to go out and improve upon that, we would have had to spend a lot of money on top of buying Jota and Carter Vickers, which is massive for us getting those 2 in. So yes, we have improved. We've got a better backup goalkeeper than we have. We've got competition at left back. We've now got 4 really good centre halves, I'd say, if Jenz turns out to be good. In midfield, we have good options holding, and then ahead of that we've got great options.
Who are your 4 centre-halves, just out of interest, because people might be wondering, is he talking about Julian? Is he talking about Welsh?
Sorry, I've cut Julian out there. No, I think Julian will be away. There was chat yesterday on Sky Sports, there'll be a couple of teams in from, but I think Stephen Welsh has been really good in the pre-season. I never expect him to be the first guy in the team sheet, but having a guy there who has come through the youth, comes in, and I can't remember ever thinking that goal was Stephen Welsh's fault. I think he always comes in and does a good job. So him, Jenz, Starfelt, Carter Vickers, I think that's 4 strong centre-halves, and then up front we've got 2 strikers. It's just out wide we maybe need something because Mikey Johnson's rumours to be going on loan today. So I think we still need something because I'm happy with Jota and Maeda. Abada I think has been good in pre-season as well, but James Forrester I've got worries about, and I just feel if Jota's not playing, Celtic lack that creative spark, while Maeda and Abada are good at getting into dangerous positions and finishing. I don't quite think they're very creative. Jota adds that. You're not going to get another Jota, but somebody who can, a wee bit of trickery that can create something. That's the only thing I'd say we're lacking right now.
Now, granted, it's still July. We've still got a good bit of July to go and August. There's still plenty of time left in the window. Have we not kind of done what we always ask Celtic to do? Have we not we've kept the core of the team together and added the the quote, the famous, the 3 or 4 bits of quality in certain positions.
Are you saying we've got the players in early for the qualifiers?
Yeah,
for the first time ever.
Oh shit, there's no qualifiers.
In the season we don't have qualifiers.
We could have, well seen Peter always gone, we could have saved that extra month of wages and brought them in August. But we've done what we always asked Celtic to do. We've kept the core of players. Will Celtic eventually sell a big player if a massive offer comes in? Maybe. They might do that. That's always a danger. But we're in a good position just now in that all these players, all the top players at the club are all contracted for a long time. So we're not in any urgency to sell any players. But we've brought 3 or 4 players in where you could say, right, there's this sort of thing about the first 11. Have we improved the first 11? But as Melly's already said, it's very difficult to do 1 year into the project when you've already built this pretty good first 11.
So what is the first 11?
I don't think
yours will be different. I know different. Jamie's will be different.
I don't think Celtic will play the same
Stephen
team.
have actually got the same one, Melly.
Well, you've revealed we've got a WhatsApp.
Just me and you agreeing on the starting 11. Don't tell Melly. Don't tell Melly this is the starting 11.
Doing those wee squad builder things. Look at this one. Betty Melly wouldn't pick that. But yeah, we've added 3 or 4 players who definitely strengthen the squad on paper. Now, I'll leave room to be proven wrong about guys like Jenz and about Bernabei because they're just in the door, and there is always the risk with the markets that Celtic shop in that 1 or 2 signings won't work out. I know, so I know that, but with the record that Celtic have got very recently in the transfer market, then there's not really any reason to believe that they're going to be flops. But when you look at that, when you look at the players who have gone, you think Bolingoli and Barkas and Soro and all that. Is the squad better? I would say it probably is. Certainly the selections in certain positions, certain worrisome positions have got stronger.
Just when Stephen I was going to come on to the outgoings there, but I think that was really key this summer as well, because having guys like Soro, Bolingoli, Barkas just sitting there taking up wages is no good for them. They're not going to play football, and getting these guys out. We've still got Ayeti probably and Julian. Hopefully they two will leave because they're not playing football. They're not going to be playing football, and they take up a lot of wages. But it's up to the clubs to find a solution for that. But even when you look back on it, right, so what did Celtic lose from last season? Beaton, I don't really think you need to replace that guy. We have McCarthy, we have Ideguchi, and I'm not going to use him at centre-half now. We've got 4 good centre-halves, and then moving ahead, it's really Tom Rogic. Matt O'Reilly was brought in, Ange said, in January because they knew Rogic was going to go. They weren't going to go for another midfielder then, but they brought him in. So fair enough, we'll give Matt O'Reilly the time. And even then, Beaton and Rogic, good experienced players who have been here for a long time. Aaron Mooy coming in, a guy that Ange knows and works with and has experience. I can see why he brought him in. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer, doesn't it? A free transfer.
Can I just say, before we go too far down this road, can I just say I don't know if I'm too hot on the transfers of Mooy and Jenz. I don't know if Jenz. So we'll start on Mooy because we've spoken about him the most. He's a known quantity, as you say. He's a bit of a no-brainer. He's someone that Ange has worked with before, right? But is he any good, or is he just going to fall in beside Ideguchi and James McCarthy? Because to me, James McCarthy and Aaron Mooy are very similar in profile, very similar career. The only difference Aaron Mooy has is he's worked with Ange before. But, you know, Ange wanted McCarthy. He's played him in a couple of games. So, for me, if I was just taking a view on Aaron Mooy for the time being, I'd say, well, the guy's probably going to slot in. He'll be finding it out between McCarthy and Ideguchi. He has to prove to me he's better than that. Moritz Jenz, another player that we identified last year, went to Lorient, didn't really do that well, you know, and we've, for whatever reason, we identified him last year. He went to Lorient for not a lot of money. Might have been his choice, might have been our choice, but whatever the story was, we didn't get him last year, so we either didn't want to pay enough for him or we offered him what we thought was fair. Whatever the story, he's now back at Celtic and he's fucking cock-a-hoop to be here.
Oh, aye.
Jeez, the comments are unbelievable. Calling it the CEO, thank you, Michael Nichols. Aye, okay. Love me. Pathetic. Right? So he's calling it the CEO. He's thanking his agent. He's thanking everyone for this move. But I'm like, and then obviously I listened to the scouting podcast and you're like, well, this guy, is he going to be better than Christopher Jullien? I know Christopher Jullien's burnt the bridges with the club and all that. Is he going to be better than Stephen Welsh? So I think he's got a bit of a point to prove there. Jota and CCV, we know what they are already. We basically signed them last year. And Bernabei, as you say, competition for left back. And I think Greg Taylor's performances towards the tail end of last year, especially the portion of the last season, he's going to have to work pretty hard to knock him off. So I'm looking at the business, I'm going, the known quantities we've brought in, great, and Jota and CCV. Bernabei, yeah, we need someone at left back. He's been okay pre-season, but there's definitely going to be an adjustment period there.
Yeah.
Particularly when he spent, I think, was it last season at Lannis, he was actually a converted left winger. So he's come back and he's playing left full back for us. And then you've got the two sort of, they need to impress me. I'm not looking at the Mooy and Jenz going, oh, what a couple of catchers those guys are.
No,
so I remain to be convinced on these two, if I'm honest.
I'm the same as you. I think with the Mooy thing, I think breaking in and getting a game ahead of Turnbull, Hatate and O'Reilly is going to be very difficult for MD because I think they're all really good players, and I think Celtic can go out, spend the money and get another guy in. So I think the Mooy one was maybe a bit opportunistic. He came up, he was released by Shanghai, was it?
Yeah.
So he released by Shanghai, and Ange maybe thought, do you know what, get him in. It's not that big a risk. I've worked with him before, and we've got him on I think it's a 2-year deal, but I'm not sure if it's a 1 year plus a 1 year extension. It's that remains to be seen, but it's one of those ones. It's not a McCarthy 4-year one where you're going, well, why have you given that guy that? Aaron Mooy's going to be 32 in September, so I think he's going to be a squad player, and I can't really go, I'm no, the same as Stephen, quite lukewarm, but he's the one I'm expecting least from, because I think he'll get little game time between the four midfielders, the three other midfielders he's up against. But with the Jenz one, I can see why. Again, we spent over 4 million on Starfelt last season, and Carter Vickers cost us 6 million. Getting a better defender than that, again, look, the Jota and Carter Vickers and Bernabei takes a huge chunk out of our budget. We can't just go and buy another £4 million players to go in midfield. It's just not feasible for a club like Celtic, especially with wages we're splashing out on other players and fees we spent last year. So I can get that. The Jenz thing, I really want him to do well, because I got to meet him last week doing the press conference, and he was such a nice guy.
Look, so easy, isn't he?
You can't just imprint on people like a baby bird. Like, you open your eyes and you see Jenz and you go, oh, he's my best mate now. Like,
No, I just the guy was so happy to be here, and he stood and shook everybody's hand.
I'd be happy to be there. I'd shake everybody's hand.
Not everybody does, but do they?
No, he's acting like a guy who is just happy to be here, and that's a worry.
Just to be clear, that was my impression of a baby bird that inexplicably speaks. Opens its eyes and says, "Mama."
But the thing with these two guys is, I don't think it's the end of the world if they're not guys that come in and play all the time. I don't know if that's specifically what they've been bought for. They're both signings that are quite low risk in the fact that we've got a loan with an option to buy Jenz. If he's good, we can get him in. If not, thanks a lot. And the same with Mooy. If it doesn't work out, it's no the end of the world. And we've already got good players.
You can say that about every player. If it doesn't work out, it's no the end of the world.
If I asked you, if I can ask you, at the end of the season, is there a position that what was the one position Celtic needed to get?
Well, if I'm looking at that, but it's a difficult one, because if you say to me, what positions do we need to strengthen? I say we need to strengthen in centre back, right? Because Julian's on his way out the door, and Stephen Welsh, while he's okay, is the drop off in quality from Carter Vickers to Welsh or Starfelt to Welsh, I think, is quite high. So how do we solve that problem? I don't think. Well, it remains to be seen whether Moritz Jenz resolves that problem.
Yeah, time will tell.
Time will tell. So he's not immediately, to me, striking me as someone that will solve that problem. Another problem I think we've got is Ideguchi, McCarthy. They look as if they're failed transfers on the face of it. And if McGregor gets injured, I know earlier on you said he's got some injury and he plays a lot of games. That's been a long time. I mean, there's an injury down the road for him. I don't think McGregor's ever really had a long-term injury apart from that facial one. If he picks up one of those,
that's the thing with Mooy, but he can play number 6 or number 8, so that's the versatility.
Yeah, but does he solve that problem on the face of it?
You're not going to get a player
kind of remains
near as good as I can.
For the money the three were paying those, maybe for those three. And then I'm looking at the wing position that you've already discussed, Mikey Johnson and James Forrest. I mean,
see, be honest, but if you were looking at the squad last season, left back was the one that was screaming out, and we've went and addressed that straight away. Centre half, as you said, we've addressed it. Midfield, we've brought in a midfielder, and remains to be seen winger as well. So there's one position there, and getting Jota and Carter Vickers. So
there's been a lot of chat online, Stephen. Obviously, people have their debates about it, and one thing that I do tickles me a wee bit is, and we can't do that in a top class, world class podcast like this. We can't say
tickle you.
We can't say in Ange we trust just to explain away every transfer. I know some people will be sort of gig Ange. But you have to look at these transfers on face value, and you have to have make up your own mind about them. And I'm looking at it going, okay, Jota and CCV, you can't argue with that. That unarguable. Bernabei looks great on paper, and in the scouting reports looks great. Can't argue with that. But these other two have raised an eyebrow.
Yeah, I think that if it's good enough for Ange, it's good enough for me. Yeah, I mean that's broadly true. We don't know better than the manager anything really. But
no.
But
some data analysts do.
Yeah. But I don't think it's healthy or useful to just take the approach that every decision he makes is 100% correct, because no manager is like that. No manager is completely infallible. So it's to me it's pointless and fruitless to be like, well, he's brought this guy in, so therefore it's a good signing. Because if you do that, then you have to give him the credit or the opposite of credit for having given Griffiths a new contract, for having given McCarthy a 4-year. I know he doesn't negotiate the contracts, but if you assume that Ange wants these guys at the club, then you have to also admit that all the guys who aren't contributing, he wanted them at the club as well. But again, I'm not sitting here questioning Ange. I'm just saying that's the kind of philosophy that's probably worth taking. You shouldn't just assume, because that's the trajectory every manager goes on. People would have been saying that about Brendan Rodgers at first as well, until the transfers went off a cliff as well. So,
that's kind of what I'm at. I know I've kind of come full circle on this, and I was making this argument in the Discord, and I wasn't getting a lot of support on the Discord, but I kind of feel if you sat down with the scouting team, right, and said, show your homework for the past 12 months, who have you found us? The answer's Bernabei, because all these other guys were scouted at the beginning of the season. And I'm looking at this going, does that just mean between finding Moritz Jenz last year, we've that whole 12-month period, we've not found a single better centre half? Or is it just he's come up and went, we'll take him?
It could be. It could also be that Moritz Jenz was the one he wanted before Starfelt, but couldn't get him, so he brought in Starfelt, and now he gets his man. We don't really know. Last season was.
If you're looking at the pedigree of the two players, though, Starfelt's career was, he was much further on in his career and bigger pedigree than Moritz Jenz was. Yeah,
Jenz is a younger guy, but Ange's a bit more versatile possibly than him, so it remains to be seen. But just on the one fact, if Ange came out and said that last week, look, we're still in the market for another player, do you think that will be a winger if Mikey Johnson goes? And it's a pre-season, so you can't really dive too much into it, but the worrying form for me, not form, but James Forrest hasn't really done it for me in all the games I've been watching. And
he's been getting a lot of football, which says to me that Ange's trying to make it work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We spoke about the deal being a bit of a strange one, but when you're looking at the performance, and I've watched him closely, because he's the one guy I think, right, if you're going to play a part, what are you going to offer us? And I'm not really seeing it from him. I'm waiting for this James Forrest of old to come back, but guys that age, it's
you
not
wait for a fit and firing James Forrest?
Yeah, we need somebody fit and firing every season, and it's going to be Forrest this
year. The problem I've got with the James Forrest thing is, a bit like you, it doesn't really make much sense to me. And if I was to identify one player, as you say, that if we could only bring one more player in, it would definitely be a winger, because I think that's where we need it. There's some curious reporting going on right now about Celtic's transfer business, and it's Celtic are happy with their transfer business so far. So the reports say Celtic are happy with the business, don't expect any more business, ... unless someone becomes available. In fact, they're working on one or two other things, and Ange fancies one more. I thought, so you've covered all bases there, dear reporter. Celtic don't want anybody unless somebody comes available, and even if somebody's not available, they're working on making somebody available that they might want to get.
Plus there's the fact that we've been gazumped so many times by our big rivals, of course, so this makes it difficult in the transfer market for us.
Stephen, this notion that every time Rangers sell a player that Celtic were supposedly interested in, they've gazumped us, when in fact it's all bollocks. And you could quite easily write, for example, Ben Davis. Celtic clearly decided they didn't want the guy anymore, because if you're Ben Davis's agent, your first phone call's to Celtic, and we went, 2 million? We nearly got him for 500,000 a couple of years ago. What's he done since then? Nothing. But now he's miraculously worth £4 million.
Did he make any appearances for Liverpool? I take it not.
No, one at most, I think.
One at the most.
Jurgen Klopp said he's a great guy, a great player. You've stuffed him in the boot of a car and sent him up to Glasgow for £4 million before the ink's dry. You're not going to say, thank God we got rid of that guy.
I had to laugh as well. It's not just us that do it as well. I'm relieved that it's not just Celtic fans, because I saw Liverpool fans tweeting about how amazing business it was to sell Ben Davis to Rangers, because they signed them for 1.5 and sold them for 3.5 or whatever it was. And it's great business. That must be about 0.3 of Liverpool's turnover. But filling the vending machine is great business if somebody buys a Lucashead. It's like this micromanaging of finances. I'm so glad it's not just us that obsesses over this kind of thing. But the gazumping thing, I like these, especially guys like Tom Lawrence. There's no way that he's looking around for a club in the off season and goes straight for Rangers. If you're an English-based player, an international player who is considering going to Scotland, because not that many players probably do want to make that move from the Championship to Scotland. But if you're open to it, you're not convincing me that Celtic weren't called about that as well.
No, even if your agent, if he wouldn't be doing his job, if he didn't go, you know what, I'll go to the Champions and the team that are directly into the Champions. No, I'll go to the team in second place. I've got a couple of qualifiers to play.
If Celtic want these players, they'd be Celtic players, and it's really that simple. It's really that simple. Unless we offer someone 15 grand a week and Rangers offer them, and the agent plays a blinder and he ends up getting 20 odd grand a week at Rangers, then perhaps you would end up at Rangers. But if Celtic want these players, then Celtic get these players, and that's really how it works.
They said no thanks, mate. They said no thanks.
The transfer reporting this summer has been amazing, because everyone that Rangers signs, they've gazumped us, and then that Calvin Bassey transfer, which consumed the news cycle for a weekend. On the Friday, it was like 18 million euros. By the time he signed, it was 23. Some news reporter then reported it was 27, and it broke the transfer fee, the Scottish record transfer fee. Then it was pointed out to him that actually that's euros, and when you look back, it's not the same as the 25 million that Kieran Tierney went from. And he went, it was a typo.
Aye, brilliant. What's all this euros patter anyway? Why are we talking about things in euros all of a sudden?
Because it's a bigger number.
Aye.
So that's why.
I did not vote for Brexit so we could be talking about euros. All of us voted for Brexit for a reason. It was to get rid of euros and transfer fees.
It's like measuring yourself in centimetres.
Measuring yourself from the arsehole.
That's what Rangers are doing with it. That's what they're doing with their transfer fees.
What an image.
Celtic's biggest expenditure has obviously been on these banners, though.
I didn't vote for Brexit, by the way. Before that goes any further.
Clip that. That'll be put on TikTok. The banners, the Parker's banners that are going up. There's so much chat about these banners, right? And I just enjoy, having a wee bit of a wind up on Twitter and having a bit of a conversation about them. Don't really care about the banners, but it says where legends are made. Celtic Park, where legends are made. And I'd sort of tweeted yesterday that's like sort of meaningless marketing jargon that you could write out on the outside of any stadium. You could picture that on the outside of Manchester United Stadium. It's not a phrase that you typically associate with Celtic. And it was pointed out as it was on the stadium last year. That was shite last year as well, right? But Celtic then tweeted, so this was yesterday, but Celtic tweeted this morning a wee Jock Stein quote and put the word legends in bold as if to say, this is where this quote's from, by the way. So Celtic already subtweeting us. Unbelievable.
There's turmoil behind the scenes in fan media again. The where legends are made thing. It's not only Man United is a big example, but you could literally say it about every single club in the world, because you might
Miami
find
Dolphins.
You might find them small time, but every club, take your Preston North End, will have legends. So any stadium is where legends of that particular club are made. So it is a little bit generic.
Can you name any Preston legends?
David Beckham played for them. Maybe probably not a legend. Ben Davies.
Legend. You've obviously got one.
Scott Sinclair.
Scott Sinclair. Anyway, back to the serious business, because that's what's starting next week. The serious business of Celtic having to defend the league title, Melly. Aberdeen, 4:30 kickoff at Celtic Park on a Sunday. Incidentally, just before we recorded this, the notification came through that the last train, obviously because we live in Scotland at the moment, the last train is actually happening.
What, past 6?
Basically you're not going to be able to get the train home, so you need to make other arrangements if you're planning to get the train home from the game. How are you feeling about the next season kicking off? Because it's came around quite quickly.
It has. You thought without these qualifiers we'd have a big break, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Celtic have went out and done the business early like we asked them, so right now I'm just really looking forward to it now. I think hasten to give Rangers credit, but they have went out and bought players. You think, do you know what? I can see where they're going to play. It seems to be making sense for them, and they have managed to get a ridiculous amount for Bassey and Aribo, who, all right, fair enough. But I think, again, looking at the rest of the league, it's going to come down to the games against Rangers, Celtic versus Rangers, because 4 points last season, Celtic got the better of Rangers in the games against them, and that was kind of difference, because, again, the league doesn't look very good, to be honest. So I think it's going to go down to that.
Spanked from
Hibs getting put out of the League Cup, Aberdeen resurgent and all that, but it just feels like it's going to be a tight race again, and not because Rangers are brilliant, that remains to be seen, but because I don't think the league will be that great, and I don't think there'll be many points drops. So Celtic need to go out there and do their business, And do you know what? I think they can do that. I think in the domestically, we're looking really, really good. There's no position right now where I go, we need to bring in somebody to play there right now. I would like another winger, but I still think the three we've got there, Abada, Jota and Maeda, if we don't get MD in, that they can rotate and do a great job there. So Celtic are looking strong. I think we're going to be playing well, and we've seen it, we've heard it all before. Every team Ange goes to, the second season's any better. And when we look to exactly a year ago, Matt O'Reilly spoke about it the other day on Sky Sports, like 90% of these players weren't in the building this time last year. We've had a season where we've went out, and looking at last season, from September onwards, we didn't lose a game in the league. That's incredible to think after where we were. So if Celtic can continue their form for last season, we should do well. We've improved the squad an awful lot, I think, if these players turn out to be good. So I think it's just strap yourselves in again, boys, because it's going to be brilliant. Plus the return of that Champions League music's going to be sensational.
Stephen, it's on next season. It's absolutely on. And, you know, we joke about the Rangers thing. We joke about the money Rangers are getting in. And
sorry, but I think this will be the end of the Skint Sevco thing.
Because I'm really glad you jumped to the end of my point there, because that's exactly the point I was making. I was building up to that, Melly, thanks. But okay, so
all the chemistry's back.
So Stephen, what Melly said, because what we're seeing here is we're seeing the eroding of any of these excuses that Celtic fans have had about Rangers. There's any notion that Rangers, they're skint. They made the Europa League last year. They made buckets of money. They sold players for a lot of money. Their managers, there's no excuses now for either team. There's no managers coming in midway through the season. There's no rebuilding the squad. There's no managers needing players or leaving, or there's no Rangers are skint, they don't have any money. They do. Literally all the excuses are gone for the first time in ages. This is two very strong Celtic. No, it's not two strong Celtic teams. It's a strong Celtic team. It's a strong Rangers team. Perhaps the strongest in, as far as I can remember anyway, way going back to before they went bust and had to do all their reforming and all that. They are. This is Lennox Lewis v Mike Tyson. This is toe to toe, Stephen. This is box office now.
This Ange's Celtic 2 electric Postecoglu.
Absolutely, it absolutely is. Do you know what this is? This is yesterday's bolognese. You know, it's had some time to mature. This Celtic team, and
always better.
Always better.
As much as we're joking about Rangers and the gazumpings and all that, my approach to these things is always to assume that they'll be good, right?
Yeah.
And that's not me praising them at all. That's not what that is. It's not even thinly veiled praise. What it is just if I approach it assuming that they are going to be a challenge, then I can only be pleasantly surprised if they're not. There's no point in me or even us going into the season thinking, pish, skint Sevco, they'll be finishing fourth. No. I just don't think there's any basis for that at all. I think it will be a challenge. I totally agree with what you've just said, Melly, but the rest of the league I don't think will be up to much, to be honest. Yeah. I don't like saying that because I don't like kind of being negative about Scottish football, but I've not really seen anything from anyone that would suggest to me that there's going to be a sustained challenge for even third. I don't know. You could throw a dart at the list of teams and one of them will come third. I just don't know.
Probably Aberdeen. Hearts are a wee bit further ahead, maybe, but
Hearts should be decent, but you tend to find that they're just so inconsistent. Like these teams, like Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, they all just go up and down. There's no predicting it. So I've not even been able to bring myself to listen to Sports Sound's individual previews for all. They've been releasing one team at a time, doing 20-minute previews.
Nobody cares.
Absolutely.
How many downloads is your Livingston preview getting?
Exactly. But I think this is going to be, as you said, two teams toe to toe.
Not that nobody cares about these other teams, by the way. I mean, nobody cares about the Sports Sound podcasts.
No, I mean, nobody cares about them. Well covered, well saved there. But it's going to be two good teams going head to head. It's going to come down to the two or the fixtures between the two teams. I think we can't rely on anyone else taking points off them. They have, I wouldn't say strengthened, but they've brought in players that kind of make sense. They've, as much as we've laughed at them over the last few years about making too much of their, sold Aribo for like 6 million or something like that, and talked about how it was a
business model.
It was a great win for the model, even though you've let one of your best players get into the last year of their contract. But with the Bassey thing, that has begun in earnest. The shifting players for big money and then immediately replacing them for less. They've brought in Ben Davies, so they seem to be on the right path. Again, I'm not bumming them up here. I'm just saying, look, Celtic need to be on this year. We need to be on it.
100%.
And there are no excuses because that whole thing has been pulled away. That lack of pre-season, the having to deal with qualifiers in June and all that kind of stuff, that's not happened. Celtic have had, to all intents and purposes, a pretty perfect preparation for the season. Yeah. No major injuries. Starfelt got injured on international duty, hasn't taken part. But apart from that, the odd knock here and there, everybody's been involved. Everyone you would expect to be involved in first team football for the first month or so has had at least a couple of run-outs in competitive games. This is what we're after every single season. This is what it should be like for pre-season. So we've had that. So Celtic really just need to keep that ball rolling.
I think it's going to be really tough next season, Melly. I think it's going to be it's going to be back to the olden days. I think
so. I think it's going to be tight again, and I think it's going to be a strange season as well, because we have got that World Cup sandwiched in there where it's going to be full throttle from this weekend right up to November, and then you're like, oh wait, there's going to be this big gap, and then not much of a break, then we're right back into it again, and you're like, there's no room for any sort of drop points or anything like that. You just need to go at this. And to be honest, I think that's the thinking behind Celtic improving the squad, because it's not going to be a first 11 this season, is it? There's going to be 3 games a week probably for most weeks right up to November. So looking forward to it, excited, nervous, and just good to have the proper football back.
Do you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing how the press cope with next season as well, because last season...
Already doing a good job, isn't
it? Last season, from basically when Ange arrived up until he won every question they asked him was couched in as if he came from another planet.
Yeah.
This is weird, isn't it? And he's like, mate, come on. Do you know about? Yes, I know about such. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to have that anymore. All those narratives are all gone. It's 2 blank slates, but it's a blank slate for Celtic.
How does it feel to be in big boy football for a change, basically all that patronising stuff?
Why did they ask him about Walter Smith as well? I know who Walter Smith is.
Remember they asked him, I think the worst question was, I can't remember the exact word and I'm paraphrasing, but it was along the lines of, he was playing in the Europa League or something. They asked him, does he see this as a chance to improve the level he's used to managing at, or something like that? That the insinuation that he's never managed at this level, and he's like, mate, I managed in the World Cup. Are you mad? Have you done your research on me?
Won an international tournament as well with Australia. Yeah, incredible. So that's all gone as well. Hopefully the media have learned a lesson, because that's ambitious. That's optimistic to say the least from me. But hopefully we've kind of done away with that as well. All the people talking about how doesn't know the league and all that. I mean, imagine that. Remember, like just this time last year, where people were genuinely talking about how he doesn't know British football and all that.
Embarrassing, absolutely, absolutely embarrassing. And we ended up winning the double. And on that, this is a fantastic place to end the first podcast of the new season. If you would like to hear more from us, you heard Stephen mention the Brexit of the Champions. It's a new podcast that we've brought out, which is basically the flagship that happens midweek. You use it to catch all the Celtic news that we didn't get in the flagship podcast. That's along with scouting, pre and post match, videos, writing. We've got a lot on there. Check it out at patreon.com/20minute Tims. But most of all, thanks for listening.